It was a miserable day. I mean, it was a...
Really? I thought...
Well, was it? Well, I can tell you now, it was the worst royal engagement I ever did. You know, I thought to myself, you know, this is all showbiz.
Arthur Edwards just spilled a huge secret about what really happened at Meghan and Harry's wedding, and trust me, it is not nice at all. It is not only surprising, it is also super awkward and embarrassing for the couple and even the royal family. When people first heard that Meghan and Harry were getting married, the whole United Kingdom was beyond excited for Prince Harry's big day. Everyone was counting down the days and couldn't wait for the big event to happen. But according to Arthur Edwards, who has been close to the royal family for years and knows everything about them, the truth of that day was nothing like what people thought it would be. Arthur, the man who has traveled the world right beside King Charles himself, was there with his camera ready to catch every single moment, every small smile, every sweet look between the bride and groom. But instead of capturing fairy tale magic, the wedding ended up shocking him in a way no one saw coming. Instead of the picture-perfect royal party, what he witnessed was complete chaos happening behind the scenes.
The photographers they engaged for the job was 5 feet away. You know, it was just hopeless. And then the carriage shot when they went past me in the carriage.
The wedding was talked about like it was going to be the biggest event ever. Famous stars from everywhere showed up to be part of it. Big names like Oprah, Elton John, and Serena Williams were all there, making the whole thing feel even more glamorous.
And then Oprah Winfrey had met them once. She was a guest. The Clooneys, you know, the guests. I mean, never met them before, but they were the guests. And, you know, I thought to myself, you know, this is all...
People called it the wedding of the century, and for good reason. But things were not nearly as perfect as the media made them seem. The wedding planner, who was supposed to have everything under control, ended up totally shocked by how the day unfolded. With so many guests arriving, it quickly became obvious that the whole event was much bigger and more overwhelming than anyone had planned for.
Guest list, beyond the lone family member she invited, was simply inviting celebrities who were total strangers.
Arthur describes everything in a way that makes it sound like a total mess from the very beginning. From your couch at home, it might have looked like a beautiful, dreamy event full of sparkle. But for Arthur and the other guests who were actually there, it felt less like a party and more like they were just trying to survive. The heat at the venue was so brutal, it could practically burn anyone standing in it. Since Arthur was part of the royal group, he had to wear a traditional royal outfit, a suit so heavy and detailed it looked like it was meant for winter, not a summer wedding. He was stuck there, sweating like crazy, forcing himself to stay calm, but on the inside, all he wanted was to escape the heat. Arthur and the guests had no shade, no place to hide, just standing under the blazing sun. Even celebrities in their fancy clothes were fanning themselves with the official wedding programs, desperate to stay cool. It was nothing like the glamorous event people imagined on TV. And then came the food, or really, the lack of it. Arthur said the meal was a huge disappointment. Instead of a royal-style feast that everyone expected, the guests were given tiny little finger foods. These canapes were so small and unimpressive that people left feeling hungrier than before. Some guests even complained, saying they would have been better off staying at home than sweating in the heat, only to be given a few bite-sized snacks. But the worst part was not the food, or even the heat. Arthur was shocked at how badly the seating was arranged. Senior royals, who had spent decades serving the crown, were pushed to the back, while minor royals got the best seats right at the front. Imagine that. People who had worked their whole lives for the monarchy treated like extras, while minor royals sat in the prime spots. Arthur himself ended up seated with one of these minor royals, and his view of the couple was completely blocked. He joked that it felt like he was watching the wedding through a GPS screen. If only a GPS could have guided him through the madness of that day. On top of that, the British media was in a mess too because Prince Harry was still upset with them over how they had treated Meghan when the engagement was first announced. She had been criticized and looked down upon, and it really bothered him. So at the wedding, instead of smiling for the cameras like he was supposed to, Harry kept avoiding them, making sure photographers could not get good shots of him and Meghan together.
Harry was angry with us, really, because some of the things that have been said about Meghan, and quite rightly, some of the things that were said about Meghan during the engagement were pretty harsh.
Arthur himself felt really annoyed by the way Harry was acting. What was supposed to be the wedding of the century ended up, for Arthur, being the worst wedding he had ever worked on in his whole career. Watching how everything turned out, he just wanted the day to end as quickly as possible so he could finally go home and get some rest.
You know, I've done some really lovely royal weddings. I did both King Charles's weddings. I did William's wedding. I did Andrew's wedding. I did Sophie and Edward. You know, I mean, they were lovely occasions. But that today,
What was supposed to be a sweet celebration of love ended up, in Arthur's eyes, looking more like a stiff business event. He felt it was clear that for Harry and Meghan, the wedding was not just about getting married. It was a carefully planned media show meant to keep all eyes on them. It had nothing to do with tradition, royal duty, or the history of the monarchy. It was about making noise, grabbing headlines, and making sure everyone kept talking about them, especially since they were already planning to step away from the royal family. Arthur does not hold back when he says the wedding was nothing like the magical royal fairy tale people had hoped for. Instead of joy, it felt more like guests were just trying to survive. They were sweating in the heat, struggling to look elegant in the blazing sun, and dealing with the disorder all around them. To Arthur, the wedding was not about honoring royal traditions. It felt cold and formal, more like a setup for Harry and Meghan's media future. He believed they had a clear plan from the start. Their goal was not really about love or family, but about making sure they stayed in the spotlight once they left the royal world behind. They knew that without their royal titles, the only way to remain talked about was to keep the media hooked on their every move. And that is exactly what they pulled off. The wedding was not just a marriage ceremony, it was their big exit strategy. It was their way of making sure they stayed in the public conversation. Arthur says the wedding marked a huge turning point for Harry and Meghan. It was not just about becoming husband and wife, it was about sending a message that, from that moment forward, they would live on their own terms. They would no longer be tied down by the rules of the royal family. This wedding was the start of their new life, a life they claimed would focus on privacy, but one still built on a never-ending chase for fame and media attention.
He decided to leave the royal family and go his own way in the United States. And he's just behaving, I think, sometimes appallingly. Certainly some of the things he said about members of the royal family, certainly, and Camilla and Catherine and his brother.
Even after the wedding was over, the drama kept going. Arthur points out that Harry and Meghan's choice to pull away from the royal family became very clear when they made their first public appearance after the ceremony. Instead of showing pride in their royal roots, they went on Oprah's show to share their complaints. They said racism and unfair treatment were a big problem inside the royal family. But Arthur did not believe their claims at all.
So that interview was left on the cutting room floor because it was so one-sided and it was so unfair. And I think about watching it now and you know, the visit about Archie and the colour of his skin, and I knew they.
After spending decades covering royal events, Arthur said the Oprah interview was one-sided and unfair. He argued that it showed once again how Harry and Meghan cared more about sharing their personal complaints than respecting royal traditions. To Arthur, the wedding itself carried deep meaning. It was not just a day to celebrate love. It was a sign of the couple's break from royal life. This was not really the wedding of the century. It was the start of their move toward becoming a media empire. From that moment, their journey pushed them into the world of celebrity projects, media deals, and business ventures. It was not just a wedding. It was the launch of their brand. And the story did not end there. In the years that came after, Harry and Meghan's split from royal life became even clearer. They had their two beautiful children, Archie and Lilibet, but their bond with the royal family grew even weaker. They kept their children away from Harry's side of the family, saying it was all about privacy. But it was clear something more was happening behind the scenes than they wanted people to know.
And it's one of the saddest things of all, Matt, of course, is that the children don't get to see their grandfather, either grandfather, you know, and that's really so awful, because they're not getting to meet their cousins and to know their cousins, and it's such a shame for them.
After breaking ties with the royal family, Harry went back to London for the Invictus Games ceremony. Arthur reveals that Harry supposedly turned down an invitation to stay at the royal palace, saying he was worried about security. But does that really add up? The palace has some of the best protection in the world, guarded at the highest level.
Over for the Invictus Games ceremony. He didn't want to stay in a...
Was this simply Harry's way of showing that ever since the wedding, he wanted nothing to do with the royal family? He seemed eager to step away from their world and live the normal life he had always wished for. He was so worried about his safety that he decided to stay at Coworth Park Hotel near Windsor Castle, where he could set up his own security team and enjoy the comfort of picking his own place to stay. Arthur suggests that these safety worries might have just been an excuse to explain why he preferred staying somewhere else.
He wanted to stay in a hotel, and he was determined to do that. And don't forget, he travels with a small retinue of bodyguards as well.
Arthur's final thoughts about the wedding really stick with you. What was meant to be a happy fairy tale moment ended up looking more like a show built on ambition and self-promotion. The wedding, with all its chaos, now stands as a reminder that things are not always what they appear to be. Something that looks like a dream come true on the outside might actually be very different once you see what is happening behind the scenes. So what do you think? Was this wedding truly as amazing as everyone said? Or was it really just part of a bigger media plan? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.